If we're not a hacker.
Welcome everybody to the American Space Museum. I'm my hand, something that Gary's going to talk to you all about. This item right here almost cost the lives of 2 Gemini astronauts 56 years ago. Interesting things in history today crossing this almost fatal Gemini mission. And 96 years ago, the father of modern rocketry, Robert Goddard, launched his first liquid fuel rocket on his Aunt Effie's farm up in Massachusetts.
Near MIT, I know that well.
You do know that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk to Gary here a little bit. Gary, we're going to talk about these things in space history. We're coming from our Gemini gallery here at the American Space Museum, the Gemini side of it. But and we're sponsored today by the Hyatt Place Hotel. You've driven by that new hotel many times. Elegant. We're grateful that Robert and Dana there are the general manager and assistant general manager, and they're taking good care of us on some projects we have in the works for 2022 and 2023. So we're grateful that they're willing to sponsor us, Gary, and we got to give a shout out to them.
Very good.
So first, tell me a little bit about where you grew up and how you got the sticking your fingers in electrical sockets.
Oh, well, early on, I probably put my fingers in the light sockets and learned what it was all about, and learned it didn't kill me, and I could do some other things. I was born in Ohio.
Which town?
I was born in Warren, not over in near the Pennsylvania side, and lived there for a number of years. Went to Louisville, Kentucky. My father was transferred down there. He was a bank president, but he was a farm boy. He knew how to fix things and was used to fixing things, and showed me how to fix things. And of course, it was during the war years, so if a light switch broke, you had to drill out the rivets and make a new piece out of a tin can and fix it. And if your car didn't run, if a gas tank failed, you had to make a hole in the gas tank, get you a tire pump, pump it up, and keep it, if a fuel pump work, keep it working.
Wow.
So I learned to make do, and I got interested in first chemistry. I learned electrical things, and I did science projects, of course, in high school. Went on to I was fortunate to be a finalist in the what was called Westinghouse Association Science Talent Search, and got a 40 trip. Got to Washington, trip to Washington, and got a scholarship to MIT. Then
scholarship to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That was after World War.
That was late. Yeah, that was in 54.
54.
54. I went there in 58.
He's
graduated.
a vibrant 80-something-year-old man for sure. You got a lot of strength. You take good care of yourself. Yeah. We appreciate all that you do here at the museum. I wanted to throw this slide up here. Marty, you can make that big. There you excuse me, at MIT, there's one of your protege. You were the protege.
I was Doc Edgerton, yes. I had a desk in his lab.
Doc Edgerton. And there you are, Gary, here in our Gemini gallery. And there's a picture of a bullet going through an apple. So tell us how all that is tied up into your life.
Well, when I was at MIT, I wanted something to do, and I went to Doc Edgerton's lab, and I said, I need a job. I'd like to earn some money. I want to do some hands-on things as well as the book learning. And he said, well, you can start. Can you clean off this table, mop off this bench?
Really?
I said, sure.
Okay.
Then he said, can you develop film? And I said, yes. He said, well, come back. Here's our dark room. He was the inventor of electronic flash.
This man, the upper left hand, just wanted to make sure our Stay Curious people realize this.
Yep.
Invented electronic strobes or flashes that are used today at every camera. And Gary Hayward here is going to tell us a little bit about his life after his contractor years for NASA, what he did with that knowledge of Edgerton strobes. But go ahead there, Gary.
Okay. Anyway, so with electronic flash, the question is that you wanted to show it off. So we always looked for things that would stop the motion. Early it was we did athletics and did people with swinging their golf clubs and baseball clubs. Or
see the multiple images set together by a strobe, and then
later
this apple.
Right. Yes. Later we would, to show that we could stop motion. We set up a little shooting range in our laboratory with a rifle and a targets, and the shock wave from the sound would trigger the flash, the shutter would be open, and we would take these pictures. And we would study various things. A part of it was just for show, but part of it was for interest. For one thing, we would shoot a light bulb. The interesting thing about shooting a light bulb is it breaks on the far side before the bullet gets to it. We looked about that. What happens, the shock wave is faster than the bullet. The shock wave goes around, focuses around the back of the bulb, knocks the back of the bulb out, and then the bullet goes out the hole.
So if my coffee mug was a light bulb, and the bullet was coming from this direction, you're saying the handle backside would blow out.
Would break first.
Would break first, not the really.
Yeah, so that's
from the shock wave wrapping around the whole thing.
Faster than the speed of the bullet.
And you were in Edger's lab when you all discovered that.
That's the sort of thing we did. We had fun and we learned.
Did you? Were you on some papers and things like that?
He gave talks, and we. My first patent, I was joint with him on an underwater sound source, and when he went talks, I usually ran the projector, and some we were joint paper on. So
he took this knowledge literally to the depths of the oceans.
Yes,
okay?
that came later. The space and depths both.
We're space first, and then depths of the ocean we're going to talk about. We're talking with Gary Hayward. I love this man. He's a great guy at our museum, but you were looking at a picture there that almost everybody's seen of the bullet going through an apple, and you were there when that was made.
That's right. Yes.
And you're going to see a couple other pictures.
I may have aimed the gun for that one. Or one similar to it. We would sight down the barrel, take the bullet out, sight down the barrel, and that's how we made sure we didn't miss the apple.
Well, check out Edgerton there. You'll see his work. I couldn't print everything up, but the strobes of a golfer or a tennis player in black and white truly looked very artistic.
Yes, he was an artist as well.
Was he?
One of the famous ones he made was milk drop. You often see the crown of the milk drop.
With a crown around it.
I was given one of those as a wedding present or something by him. We autographed and all. I have it on the wall. But that was famous. He always laughed about it. He said, "We never got it perfect. Never got every one of those little dots standing on top of it." But anyway,
we're off on a way tangent of space, because I love all this science stuff.
All right, we'll get out of your way.
We're going to get to that. Let me get my glasses down here. We're coming to you from our Gemini Apollo gallery. Gemini is how NASA said to pronounce it, like Jiminy Cricket back in the day. You disagree?
We never did. Maybe NASA did. McDonnell didn't.
Oh, well, I do it to be cool.
All right, that's fine. All right,
is that fine?
That's fine. No, it'll be official. That's fine.
Okay.
We know it by either name.
Yes, we do. Gemini so we've got a Gemini mission, and but we're going to talk about a couple other things here first, Gary, before we get into what you did for a living. We're going to wish happy birthday to this man, Walt Cunningham, 90 years old today. Yesterday was the 90th birthday of Alan Bean, who passed away a few years ago. But Marty's met Walt Cunningham a few times, have you not? I haven't said hi to Marty Winkle, our cameraman, my co-producer here. We moved our Stay Curious studios inside the Gemini gallery here today, and always fun to troubleshoot a few little problems, and thank you all for hanging with us and staying curious today. Walt Cunningham, Ronnie Walt Cunningham was born March 16th, 1932 in Creston, Iowa. And he grew up in Los Angeles area and attended Venice High School in 1950, a Navy fighter pilot, become one of the early Apollo astronauts in the third group chosen by NASA. His only mission was Apollo 7, where they shook down for 10 days the Apollo command module with his commander Wally Schirra and Don Isley, and both of them have passed away. He never had another mission, and instead he went to head up the Skylab branch of the astronaut office. All right. I've never met him. All accounts, a pretty good guy. He participates in a lot of the autograph shows and things like that. So there, I got another picture of Walt there. There he is.
Oh, yeah.
To Mark, Walt Cunningham, but it's not me. It's something else I found. I put that up there because he has the best flat top haircut of any astronaut ever. Okay, he has got an aircraft flat top there, man. You could land on his there, but there he is. Later years, Walt Cunningham, 90 years old. Happy birthday to you.
That's pretty neat.
Next, we're going to talk about 96 years ago in space history, in the middle of a farmland in Auburn, Massachusetts. A young man named Robert Goddard, on a cold winter morning, flew the first primitive liquid rocket 41 feet in height, 41 feet high, a 2.5 second flight, and literally changed everything. You know a lot about that. What do you? Here is our honoring Goddard in a marble stone out at our Mercury monuments here at Spaceview Park. There is a close-up of that. We love it that it's out there. Marty particularly is a Goddard man and a very misread man. He got his feelings hurt when people thought he was a kook, when he wanted to go to the moon, and they thought that was crazy. And tell us a little bit about. I know you grew up with this man idolizing.
Well, I didn't
him.
grow up with because he was the one, of course, that made it possible. He learned that you could do a liquid engine rocket. And the United States didn't pay much attention to him, but the Germans did.
Yeah, they did.
And the Russians did. And later on, this came back. Of course, the Germans came to us and sort of helped us how to do it and how to do the Apollo.
Tell us the backstory of that when they captured Wernher von Braun.
Well, they didn't capture him. Basically, he surrendered. There was a Project Paperclip to pick up their technology. And he, with these engineers, came, I guess, first to White Sands, and then later to Huntsville. And did his rocket work there, brought a number of old V2s.
But they asked him, the Army asked him, how do you know so much about this?
Oh, he read it, yes.
And his reply was...
Thank you, well, he read Goddard's work.
Yeah, he said, don't you know the great Robert Goddard? He's the one that figured this out 20 years ago.
And we'd done nothing with it, really.
Yeah, we'd done nothing with it.
So it came around a long way.
Goddard had a lot of patents. He was very reclusive and secretive. He was... had the support of Charles Lindbergh.
Yes, they were
after this, and was actually in the UFO town of Roswell, New Mexico, is where he set up the first rocket center of America there. He could have orbited something in the late 30s, early 40s if he really wanted to. I think he'd gotten.
If the technology.
Marty, he got up to he got over a couple miles high, didn't he?
I think it's like 6,000 feet.
Yeah, 66.
Over a mile.
But he needed more money for bigger rockets. Here is the exact place on Earth where father of modern rocketry, Robert Goddard, launched his first little primitive rocket. And they have a stone obelisk there, and it's on a golf course, or a golf course is nearby there. So,
Auburn.
Sweet. There we go. We got Gary's name on the bottom. Appreciate that. Well, we're going to now talk about something that you worked on, Gemini VIII. Tell us a little. This is the astronauts. That's David Scott on the left. David Scott's 88 years old. And, of course, that's Neil Armstrong on the right. Excuse me. Scott is going to be 90 in June, Marty. We got a lot of them cracking the... What is that? Octogenarian and 10, and then what? Nana?
I don't know. That's a good one.
Hope you make it though, buddy.
I hope so. I have ways to go.
I'll put my money on that anytime. Well, here's the great astronauts, both moonwalkers. David Scott, Apollo 15 commander, also was the command module pilot of the Earth orbiting shakedown of the lunar module, Apollo 9. So. Gary, tell us a little bit about your work at McDonnell in St. Louis.
In St. Louis, that's where. Yes, I was at MIT. Sputnik had gone up. We'd go up to the roof of the dorm, watch it go over, listen on our amateur radio to the beep of it as it came by. Got interested in it, and the United States decided, well, we better catch up. So there'd be ads in the paper and in the space or in the techno magazines for engineers, and they'd fly you around the country and wine you and dine you to come work for their companies. And one that sounded interesting to me, because they were doing the actual spacecraft, was McDonnell in St. Louis. So they hired me, went out there, and they put me in charge on the Gemini of what was called the system integration, actually for the guidance and control system. And what that was to get the various black boxes or subsystems to work properly with one another. That meant you had to have the signal levels and the grounds and the wires and everything had to be right. So I would go through that. We also spent time, of course, figuring out to be sure if anything went wrong, how we got out of it and so forth. So that was my job. And then after we got the spacecraft designed, I came down here to help support the launches.
Wait a minute. I got a phone call here. I heard. Did you hear that ringing, Marty? Hey, it's Mark Usiak. He's on the other line telling me he's in an old phone booth in there.
That's cute. We have on our desk.
With intercoms. We love, kids don't even know that this is a phone, really. The dial, the rotary dial, and punch the different extensions you had there. A few people have been beat to death with this thing, too. You better believe it's pretty
They
heavy.
were strong, yeah.
But Gary, I bring that up as this is the 60s. We were in a moon race with the USSR. And this was, you were hired when, 61, 62?
Yes, right, yes.
So, so what was the feeling that you were part of America's moon race with a communist Russia?
Well, it was sort of the Cold War, and we knew it was sort of two big powers were deciding which system would prevail. And we felt we were trying to do our part to show the superiority, or what we thought was superiority of democracy as opposed to the Russian and the communist approach. And we worked around the clock. They had to tell us to go home. They would, I think every 2 weeks they made us take a day off. But people were there day and night.
A day off
three
every
shifts.
2 weeks.
Every
That's been
day.
what Marty had. He was working 30 12s a month.
Mercury, of course, which was, well, the astronauts, some called it spam or man in a can, sort of.
Which McDonnell also built in
Yes,
St. Louis.
that was our first spacecraft. But that had no provisions for changing its orbital plane, and you couldn't get out of it or anything like that. But when it was decided by President Kennedy to go to the moon, it was clear we needed a trainer.
Behind me are the 10 flights of Gemini on a panel that was at a restaurant called Ramon's on Cocoa Beach. Very famous for the Caesar salad, I understand.
Yeah, that was good, yeah.
You eat a few meals there at Ramon's?
I've been there. Yes, I didn't go regularly, but.
But they honored the astronauts up there. They actually got Neil's right over my shoulders. Neil there, and they got NEAL there. But they had this 1960s imagery of the gold on wood was the style back then. But I just wondered, did you feel a sense of owning this moon race?
Well, we owned the. Yes, I thought we
personally that you.
And it was a real team effort. It was all the country was involved, and we supported it. We knew we had to get the Gemini to work, and we had successful missions with some glitches, one of which we'll discuss today, the anniversary.
Right.
Well,
let's get to that. I want to talk about. I didn't grab one of our good models, but everybody's pretty familiar with the Gemini model. What you might not know, it has the gull wings right there that open up. And this white area in the back is the avionics. That's stuff you were concerned with back here.
Yes, the spacecraft as well. That was the propulsion module.
But this was where the fuel tanks were, the so forth and so on. The spacewalks, they would go back there and get tools. So it's very cramped. It's like Gary and I sitting here in a chair looking out a window. You couldn't get away from that window.
No.
It was right in front of your face.
Right, it had to be.
And your helmet was just inches above where they put the hood. Very claustrophobic, it would seem to me. Did you ever sit in it?
Oh, yes.
Check
just get in. And those days, of course, we wore suits to work. And I remember getting into it, take my jacket off, and I'm not very big, to kind of fit in there nicely. And I thought, boy, how these astronauts manage with their suits. But of course, most of them were small people. And in the case of particular Gemini, because it was fitted with ejection seats, they couldn't be very tall because you had to be able to clear that if you ever had to eject out. Fortunately, we never did.
Right.
But so it was a cramped thing. It wasn't anything like shuttle or anything like even Apollo.
Yeah, you can't imagine that these are fighter.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Well, what's the old? If it lands, it was a good flight.
That's right. If you can walk away from it, it's a good
walk
landing.
away from it, it's a good landing. There you go. Well, we're talking with Gary Hayward here, who is a system integration engineer for McDonnell, rookie commander, Neil Armstrong were launched after a rocket on top. That's the Boat Tail Atlas II launching that up there to become the target. And the target looked like this. It ended up looking like the, just like a second stage of a rocket with a docking collar on it. And they were going to dock, and then the engine in the back could boost it up higher, which it did on several Gemini missions afterwards. And these Gemini missions were in 1965 and 66 every other month. It was
it was rapid.
Almost every other month, 10 in less than 2 years. By the way, the Soviet Union did not launch one mission during 65 and 66. And so they docked, and tell us from there what happened, Gary.
Well, they docked and started to use the idea was to use the Agena to boost them to higher orbit. But before they could do very much, the whole assembly started to roll. And of course, the first thought was, because they just had docked up with the Agena, there was something wrong with the Agena. So he uncoupled from the Agena.
And over like that?
Yes, that's what
like
it
on
was.
a spit, because the thruster stuck. This is... Hold that up here, Gary.
Okay, for the various modules. And we had, basically, when the shorted, he had the presence of mind to kill the whole ring of thrusters. We had no way to kill just one thruster. And then, of course, after that, because the mission rules were that once you disable that row, you had to then return because you lost your redundancy. But
he used the thrusters on the front. Scott threw up and passed out, and Neil probably did the same and came to just in time to save him. It's really a harrowing event that lasted 30 minutes. Now this roll from the way it started till they got stabilized was a full 30 minutes. That's a third of the way around the world.
Right.
Okay. It did build a radio network. NASA did around the world. I think 84-inch receivers, radio telescope receivers.
But after he had to separate and then fire reentry, then he didn't even know where he was. He didn't know whether it was over land or water. Had to come down.
Yeah.
And fortunately, then we were able to track him. But he was quite hours in the ocean before they were able to get to him.
Yeah, we got some pictures to show that here.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of you.
Here is the Gemini VIII model. Is in the Neil Armstrong Museum right off I-75 in his hometown of Wapakoneta, Ohio. I've probably seen that 25 times. I went there a lot growing up in nearby Findlay. That's cool that they have it there. And what strikes me, Gary, looking inside these, they're really not much different than a fighter jet.
No,
the way it looks like. And of course, McDonnell built
that's
fighter
what we built.
jets.
We built F-4s. That was the thing.
The F-4,
and one of the stories that J.S. McDonnell used to always get on when we had a launch and would announce. And I remember him once telling the engineering group for the spacecraft, he said, well, I want your people to know, think you're pretty important things, but the money's made out on that production floor that keeps you going because making those aircrafts.
Oh, okay.
Kept us in our place properly.
Yeah, it's like people of Amazon reminding Jeff Bezos that $1 billion he gives his blue. This, of course, is the Agena rocket. Look, Action Manager Nick Enix. Thank you for letting me borrow this, Nick. We washed our hands pretty good. I'm going to put it back over there. But what was wrong in here was a solder.
We think it was a solder ball. I'm sure that's what was. We didn't do the actual analysis. I think NASA did that, but there was obviously a short circuit which caused that thruster to stay on.
Let's go to the other picture I have. There's the thruster up close there, something you couldn't see there.
Module.
The module, they call it. That's the mission report review or something up there at the top where they analyzed it. And here's the astronauts in the water after being rescued. You note the green dye. The green dye comes out of the spacecraft to create a trail in the ocean because they launched about 9 in the morning. It was only 7 orbit mission it ended up being. So it was 7 orbits and saving the lives of both these astronauts. Neil Armstrong's next trip is to the moon. And here's what David Scott said later. He later praised Armstrong's action circumstances. It was my lucky day to be flying with him.
For sure.
Unquote.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You concur with that?
I certainly do. We always thought later, and you may come to this, but we always thought that was one of the things because of his good work in that flight. That was why he was selected for.
Of course, he flew the X-15 space plane. All right, to the edge. He never got his astronaut wings because he never went above the Kármán line.
Right.
And he saw 4 of his X-15 buddies killed.
That's the way it was.
And that's part of the story of the first man. Is what made him up was then his best friend Ed White got killed in the Apollo 1 fire. And then the weight of the world is on him to be the first human to walk on the moon. An extraordinary human being, Mr. To the end of his life. Let's see what we got going there. Oh, and I thought I'd throw a picture up there. Never seen this picture of them on the ship that rescued them. So.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. Yeah, Armstrong rocked a pretty good flat top there for a while too.
Yeah, the military haircuts.
That's right. There you go. Because they were free.
That's right.
That's right.
Didn't need them very often either.
Well, Gary, you got anything else to say about Gemini? You were involved in Apollo afterwards, and then you segued into what?
Probably the best experience of my life, and we were very proud. That was the sort of thing that was done, and because that was the sort of thing that was done, and because we were in a hurry, knew we had to take some chances. We tried not to do dangerous things, but that was the philosophy.
You hear all the time, and I pick your brain about all kinds of things.
It's a great place to be. Everyone should come and see it.
Yeah, tell people about why you're involved here at the American.
Although, of course, the space program pretty much disappeared, and the town pretty much disappeared, and the work, of course, disappeared. And I could have stayed on. I'd done some building things, but I had a boss that said I would stay in Florida before I would go back to St. Louis, and I'd stay in Florida pumping gas before I go back to St. Louis and shovel snow.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't quite that way, but I ended up after I went up to Cape Cod, joined up with another friend of mine that had worked at MIT.
And ended up with this gentleman, Marty. That is Jacques Cousteau with one of his submersible.
Yep.
Is that Alvin?
No,
that looks smaller.
That was Calypso. That's Calypso. That was well before. He operated. He was he was the early oceanographer. Had his ship and went out and did the early thing. He was the inventor of scuba. Was what his invention was. And he would
tell us what scuba stands for. Do you remember? Self-contained
underwater
you tell us.
Breathing
apparatus, right?
Tanks on the back and all that. He did that in wartime France, of all things. But anyway, he was interested in oceanography. And,
well, how'd you get to know Cousteau?
Well, I knew him because he knew Edgerton. And
he knew your professor at MIT, Edgerton.
He, of course, doing underwater photography, needed light. So he came to see Edgerton and said, well, can you make me some flash and some cameras, underwater cameras? And they would sketch out a design. Then he would we'd come back to strobe lab. I was electrical engineer. I would do the electrical design. I had a friend, a mechanical engineer, Sam Raymond, who later started his own company, which I also worked for. Later, I used a lens from that camera for a deep ocean camera. But I know the camera, but that's.
And you ended up helping him take this monumental photograph.
Yes. We made most of the underwater cameras that were in that era. We sort of were the technology. Edgerton had designed the early ones, but our company later took over the design when his company didn't want to do them further. And we designed them to full ocean depth cameras. We sold them all over the world, and they were sort of the standard for deep ocean work. And therefore, we knew people were in that involved. Bob Ballard was an oceanographer at Woods Hole, which was adjacent to where our company was. And he would come to us. He was interested all his life. He wanted, his adult working career, he wanted to go find the Titanic. That was 2 experiments. We built him cameras and things. And finally, I built some cameras which were actually used for the discovery and search for the Titanic.
This is one of the pictures of one of your cameras there. Yep. That's the bow of Titanic. So you worked with Bob Ballard and Jacques Cousteau, and
I had a lot of good connections.
Met a few little astronauts along the way.
That's right, right place in the right time. I had a lot of good jobs.
You're there. You're a tinker. You can envision him always with his hands busy, wanting to do something to stay busy there. But when you first saw these pictures of the Titanic and knowing how famous they would be and so forth, how'd that make you feel?
Well, I was just glad to do it. For first, we didn't know if we could take pictures in that deep water. And we did a couple of things. We built, in a glass sphere, we built a camera for a video camera. And the video camera was to get the ASA. This was before CCDs. And then we would store that in the frame. And
You actually were in the bathysphere, Alvin.
Yes, I've made 3 dives in it to, I guess, at least 1,000 meters. That's quite an experience.
3,000 feet.
Yeah.
Over half a mile down. What was that like?
It was interesting. It was fascinating.
Interesting.
It was interesting, Cole. Yeah, you had no real. And the worst part was that there was 3. It would have 3 people. It would be 2, an engineer, 2 scientists, or an engineer, and a scientist, and a pilot. And your equipment, of course, water would condense once it cooled. You had no sensation of depth once you saw the water. Once they pulled the plugs in and the water went by the window, then you're just. And it took about 3 hours to get to the bottom. but everything would get covered with moisture. So all my equipment, and I even had a video recorder there, have to be all in plastic bags. When it got down and everything got stabilized, then you could unwrap everything and go together. So it was interesting engineering, that was for sure.
Why don't you he's a ham radio operator. Why don't you tell everybody your call numbers out there? You want to call up Gary Hayward.
I'm KJ4. I'm KJ4 BOJ, Baker Oscar Juliet, in phonetically, and I'm active with the Amateur Radio Club, North Brevard Amateur Radio Club here in Titusville, of which I'm vice president. And we provide emergency communication during hurricanes and any other time when your cell phone doesn't work or your phones or your home phones don't work. We we send our people with little portable radio sets around to the shelters and the Red Cross and the hospitals so that we can have communication. And
that's a worthy thing too, of course, and a Renaissance man, if there ever was one. Gary Hayward here. Thank you so much, sir.
You're quite welcome.
Helping everyone stay
Well,
curious.
glad. Do our best.
On there, here on the anniversary of Gemini VIII, we've got some people watching today. We got Dave Stange. He's on Hawaii. We're figuring up a trip there. Scott Polk is in Hobart, Australia. Hi, Scott. Christopher Mick is warming up in Hudson, Wisconsin. He's an outreach guy. We got Carlton Bailey and Mark Usiak. I'll have to give them a call up. They're launch photographers. We had Mark on yesterday.
Oh, good.
And they're getting credentialed for the rollout tomorrow.
Oh, excellent.
Of there. Professor Professor Sewell, glad that you're there. Cynthia Rossi is there. Space Resources watches us a lot. Tracy Lee. Thank you, Tracy, for 50 stars. And James Michael Sigler. We're glad that you're all watching Staying Curious. And Tom Usiak. He's in Pennsylvania, and the Usiak brothers are good partners of our museum.
Excellent.
And he will be at Photo Lab.
Oh, well.
And Tom Usiak's going to talk on Stay Curious next month about the NASA labs and how they disseminate all those pictures and so forth out there. So we'll let you know when Tom's on here. You'd love to meet him. So, well, Marty, thank you for all that you do. Thank you, Jessica Galloway, for helping us out here this morning or this afternoon. And wait, what? Is that Usiak calling me again? All right, we're done with Stay Curious for the day, okay?
Very good.
So thank you, everybody, for watching our little show here. We're glad that you get something out of it. Space history and national treasures, space workers that are talking not only what they know, but they're talking from the heart, because you really, you've had an amazing, interesting career, and God bless you, man. We love what you do.
Come see our museum. It's a great one.
Thank you very much. And until then, I'm Mark Marquette on behalf of Marty Winkle and Gary Hayward saying, do come and visit our museum soon to bridge the space between us. Let's see who's on there.